So we're going to make a scissors, paper, rock game. Now I'm sure you're familiar with the rules of how this works. So there's going to be a lot of outcomes that we have to cover. So let's look at some possible scenarios. Starting with the computer with scissors. So that would be a tie, computer wins, player wins. If the computer is paper, player wins, tie, computer wins. And if the computer is rock, computer wins, player wins, and tie. So with all these possibilities, how do we write some code that covers all these scenarios without writing out every scenario? So the first one is to work out what are the tie scenarios. So if the user matches a computer pick, well then it would be a tie. So we would have this scenario, or this scenario. And all of those could be wrapped up into a tie by writing a bit of code that says if user guess equals computer pick. Now for the computer to win, these would be the scenarios, starting with scissors. So then after we have those scenarios wrapped up into one block of code, well then we simply say any other scenario is the user wins. So let's now look at this in code. So here it's pretty straightforward. The cat's asking to choose one. And it tells me that I lose. Try again. Told me it's a tie. Now I can see already on this particular version, I'm going to need to work on this particular program a little bit more to feed back to the user what the computer picked. Otherwise it looks like the computer could just be picking any answer. So if we look over here for the Python, scissors, paper, or rock. So you can see here, it says both chose rock. And here it says more explicitly, you win. The computer chose scissors and you chose rock. And again, here, you know what the computer's picked, you know what you've done, and when you compare them. Now let's also check for valid input. If I put in, if I don't put in scissors, paper, or rock, it will keep looping until I put in one of those choices. Okay, so what we're going to do now is have a look at the code and just understand it, pull it apart a bit, and then in the second video, we will build this from the ground up. So let's have a look inside of Scratch. So we've got quite a bit here. So let's start here. So first of all, we're picking a random number, 0, 1, or 2, and we're setting two variables to empty. Computer pick is one, it's going to be an empty variable, and the user guess is going to be another empty variable. Okay, now we've got some if statements. So what we're trying to do is populate this computer pick with scissors, paper, or rock. And we do that by picking a random number here. And if the random number is 0, then scissors will go in here. If it's 1, then paper will go in here. If it's 2, then rock will go in there. So let's get in the computer's guess. And now here we've got the while loop. So if we take out of the while loop, we're just getting user input and we're setting that variable, which is user guess, to whatever the user input is. And so we look at the user input here and let's just run this. So it's populated rock for computer pick, and it's going to ask me to input a value. So if I put in rock, you can see it populates into the blue one first, and then we set this orange user guess to the same value. So now we can use that throughout the program. Now we wanted to put this part, the user input, into a loop, because at the moment, I could write anything. And it will accept it. The program won't necessarily work, but it accepts the input. So we want to put in a condition here that says, in Scratch, it's saying, repeat this loop until that variable user guess is equal to scissors, or paper, or rock. And then it will break out of that loop and move to the next part of the program. And so we can test that by going So I've just put a message here to say I have broken out. So let's just see if I put in volcano, it keeps asking me, but if I put in one of the 3 valid inputs, it says you've broken out. So what that means is it was circling around here until that one or that one or that one was input, and then it moves to the next block of code. So I can throw that test away. The next block of code is the comparison part. So if the user guess equals the computer pick, well then it's a tie. And then the next part is a scenario where you lose or the computer wins. Well, the final part is where you win. So let's have a look at these. So if the user guess equals the computer pick, so if the computer pick was rock and the user guess was rock, well then it would say tie. If they don't match, it would move to the next branch. And the next branch is either here or here. Yeah, so how we break this down is we keep the order of scissors, paper, rock. If the computer pick is scissors or paper or rock, what does the user need to be for the computer to win? So if computer is scissors, well then user has to be paper for computer to win. If the computer is paper, then user has to be rock for computer to win. If the computer is rock, then user has to be scissors for the computer to win. And so if the computer wins, well then this block of code runs that says you lose. Now any other scenario is going to mean that you win. So if it's not a tie and the computer hasn't won, well then you have won. And then that part goes into here. So let's just play this one more time and we'll have a look at what variables are being populated. I'm just going to put in random number as well. So the random number is 1, which is not that one, is ignored. It's not that one, that's ignored. It's this one here. Random number is 1, which populates computer pick with the value of paper, which is a string of text. Then we get the user input, and it's going to loop until we enter one of those words. So just to test, that's looping. So I know that the correct answer is paper because of this testing environment here. So I'm going to also put in paper. And it's gone the first option of tie. Next time I'm going to play. So this is 0. Computer pick is scissors. I want the computer to win. So I'm going to put in paper. The computer's won. And my last test is if I win. So random number of 2. The computer is rock. So for me to win, I need to put in paper. So that's a quick run through on how the logic works. And once we have this working, and then we can concatenate the output to read more like the other programs have done. So let's have a look at Python. Here's the complete code. So before we start, let's just have a look at the logic. So here is like the pseudo code. So we get the computer's pick, which is either scissors, paper, or rock based on 0, 1, or 2. The user's guess. And we want to set up the loop so that there's valid input of scissors, paper, or rock. Then we compare the user's guess to the computer pick. If they tie, if they match, well then we say they tie. In the scenarios where the computer wins, well then we would output you lose because the computer chose this and you chose that. Or the alternate scenario, which is everything else, is that you win because while the computer picked this, you've picked this and your item beats the computer's item. So let's just bring back the full code. So we first of all declare the 2 variables as empty strings. The computer's pick is we've got this random number, and if it's 0, we have to import the random library. And if it's 0, then that empty string computer pick is filled with the word scissors, or it's filled with the word paper, or it's filled with the word rock. And then we set up a while loop. So while user's guess does not equal scissors, and user guess does not equal paper, and user guess does not equal rock, well then we put in another prompt. So it's going to keep looping, and we need this prompt to break the loop and to give us a chance to actually put in an input that is going to break out of the while loop. So let's assume we've broken out of the while loop by putting in one of those 3 valid inputs. So now if it's a tie scenario where the computer pick is the same as user's guess, well then you print tie, you put in the computer pick, whatever that is. You both chose the computer pick. It's going to be correct. In the scenario where the computer wins, computer pick equals paper and user guess equals rock, or computer pick equals rock and user guess is scissors, or computer pick is scissors and user guess equals paper. So you simply look at these 3 first, and then you put in whatever the user guess would have to be for the computer to win in this scenario. And in any of those 3 cases, you would print you lose, the computer chose whichever one they chose, and you let the user know what they chose, and they know why they've lost. And then else, any other option, you win, the computer chose this and you chose that. Now let's have a look at JavaScript. Very much the same. We start with an empty variable called user guess. Now notice here, we've got user underscore guess. Sorry, in JavaScript we've gone with camel case. It's not strict, it's just the convention. So doing an underscore will work, but the convention is in JavaScript to use camel case, which is the big capital letter. The computer pick. So random number is 0. If it is, populate computer pick with the word scissors. So what we should have here, to get our computer pick exactly like we've done, random number, which is this in JavaScript, picks 0, 1 or 2 and populates the computer pick with a string of text. The user guess, it puts up a prompt box and asks for one of these 3 words, and we've got the while loop. And so while the user guess does not equal scissors, or it does not equal paper, or it does not equal rock, we stay in this loop. But each time it loops, another prompt box opens up and gives you another chance to break the loop by putting in one of these 3 words. You can put in anything and it will keep looping until one of those 3 words here is considered valid input and breaks out of the loop, and then it moves to the next part of the program where we're comparing the computer pick to the user's guess. So if it's a tie, if they match, well then we document.write, tie, you both chose, and you feed back to the user. If the computer wins, same scenarios, but here we've got if, else if, we start with if, else if, computer pick equals paper and user guess equals rock, or, and this or is when you hold shift and the key above your enter, it looks like 2 dashes, or this case, or in this case. Well then, this block of code inside the curly brackets will run, which document.write, you lose because I chose this and you chose that. And then any other scenario is that you won. So we've had a look at the code, the logic, how this works. Now let's look at building this from the ground up.